It's funny the things you think about in the moments that shatter your life. When I turned the key in my own front door, expecting an empty house, my mind was on quarterly reports and whether I'd remembered to pick up the dry cleaning. But the sound that drifted down the stairs, my wife's laugh, a melody I knew better than my own heartbeat, tangled with the deep, unfamiliar rumble of a man's voice, wiped it all away. In that single, echoing moment, the foundation of my 20-year marriage didn't just crack, it turned to dust. My first instinct wasn't rage, it was a cold, terrifying clarity. A plan began to form, not of simple revenge, but of a meticulous, calculated dismantling of a carefully constructed world of lies. You think you know how this story of the cheating wife ends? Think again. What I uncovered next changed everything. Before diving in, hit that subscribe button and comment below. Have you ever dealt with betrayal? Let's hear your stories. Part 1: The Echoes in the Silence. My life until that point was a blueprint I followed meticulously. I'm Mark, 48 years old, an architect. I build things that last, or so I thought. Our house, a sprawling suburban colonial I designed myself, was my fortress. My wife, Sarah, was the heart of it. Our twin daughters, now away at college, were the legacy we were building. We were the picture of American success, the kind you see in glossy magazines, the ones where the smiles are just a little too bright. For the last year, however, a subtle dissonance had crept into our domestic harmony. It wasn't one big thing, but a series of small, almost imperceptible shifts. Sarah, who had always been a homebody, suddenly had a packed social calendar. There were new friends from the book club, late-night yoga classes, and weekend charity events I was somehow never available for. She bought a new phone and guarded it like the crown jewels, its screen angled away from me with a practiced flick of her wrist. Her scent changed, too. The familiar lavender and vanilla I loved was often masked by a sharper, more exotic perfume, a scent she claimed was a free sample she was trying out. I'd rationalized it all, of course. Midlife crisis, empty nest syndrome. I was working long hours trying to land a major city contract, a project that could secure our future. I told myself I was doing it for us, for our family. I'd come home, tired and smelling of drafting paper and coffee, to a wife who seemed distant. Our conversations became perfunctory, checklists of household chores and updates on the girls. The easy intimacy we once shared had been replaced by a polite, almost formal silence. I remember one night, about a month before it all came crashing down, I tried to bridge the gap. I'd brought home her favorite wine and suggested we watch the old black and white movie we'd seen on our first date. She smiled, a tight, practiced expression that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Mark, that's sweet," she'd said, tapping at her phone. "But Brenda's having a crisis. I promised I'd be on call tonight. Rain check. Brenda was always having a crisis." I watched her from the doorway of our kitchen, her thumb flying across the screen, a faint, secretive smile playing on her lips. She wasn't talking to Brenda. I knew it, in that deep, gut-level place where unwelcome truths hide. But admitting it to myself felt like pulling the pin on a grenade. So I just nodded, put the wine away, and retreated to my office, the silence of our big, beautiful house ringing in my ears. I was an architect, a man who understood stress points and load-bearing walls, yet I couldn't see that the central pillar of my own life was about to buckle. Part 2: The Day the Music Died. The business trip to Chicago was supposed to last 3 days. We landed the contract on day 2. My boss, ecstatic, told me to take the rest of the week off. "Go home, Mark," he'd boomed, clapping me on the back. "Surprise your wife." "You've earned it," the idea bloomed in my mind, a rare flower of romantic spontaneity. I would surprise her. I imagined the look on her face, the genuine, unforced smile I missed so much I didn't call. I took an earlier flight, the kind of giddy excitement I hadn't felt in years buzzing under my skin. I stopped and bought a ridiculous bouquet of stargazer lilies, her favorites, their cloying scent filling my car on the drive home from the airport. I parked a block away, wanting to walk up to the door like I was a suitor again. It was a Tuesday, 2 in the afternoon. The street was quiet, wrapped in the sleepy hum of suburban midday. I let myself in through the front door, my movements soft, my heart thumping with a childish glee. "Honey, I'm home," felt too cliché, so I decided to just find her. The house was still. I set the flowers on the hall table, their sweet smell now feeling slightly suffocating. And then I heard it, a sound from upstairs, from our bedroom. It was music, low and rhythmic, and then a laugh, Sarah's laugh, but it was different. It was a throaty, uninhibited giggle I hadn't heard since we were dating. It was the sound of pure, unadulterated joy. A joy that clearly had nothing to do with me. My blood went cold, every muscle in my body locked. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, a statue in my own home, listening. A man's voice followed her laugh, a deep, confident murmur. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was intimate, familiar. They were sharing a secret, a private joke in my bed in the middle of a Tuesday. I started up the stairs, my feet like lead. Each step creaked, a sound I'd never noticed before, now screaming my intrusion. The bedroom door was ajar, just a crack. Through it, I could see a sliver of my life, refracted and twisted into something unrecognizable. A man's shirt, a crisp blue Oxford, was slung carelessly over the armchair where I normally threw my worn-out sweaters. A pair of expensive-looking loafers lay on their sides near the foot of our bed. My bed, I heard the rustle of sheets. Her voice, a soft whisper now. "Derek, stop, we have to be careful." Derek, so he had a name, it was bland, forgettable. The name of a man who sells luxury cars or manages a hedge fund. The name of the man who was in my bed with my wife. I saw a shadow move across the sliver of visible wall. I heard the clink of a glass. My hand was on the doorknob. My knuckles were white. All I had to do was turn it. To throw the door open and unleash the hurricane of rage building in my chest. To scream, to break things, to destroy. But I didn't. In that moment of pure, white-hot fury, a different thought, colder and sharper than any rage, sliced through the chaos. An architect doesn't demolish a building by swinging a random sledgehammer. He studies the blueprints. He finds the weaknesses. He brings it down with precision. I backed away from the door, my movements silent and deliberate. I crept back down the stairs, each step a descent into a new, hellish reality. I picked up my briefcase, walked out the front door, and gently closed it behind me, leaving the lilies on the table to slowly wilt in the home that was no longer mine. Part 3. A ghost in my own house. I drove to a nondescript diner 10 miles away, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and a permanently greasy smell. I ordered a black coffee I didn't touch. I just sat there staring into the dark, reflective liquid as the sounds from my bedroom played on a torturous loop in my head. Sarah's laugh, his voice, Derek. The first wave was pure, animalistic rage. I wanted to go back there and drag him out of my house. I imagined my hands around his throat, the satisfying crunch of bone. I pictured smashing everything Sarah held dear, her porcelain figurines, her collection of first-edition novels. I wanted her to feel a fraction of the demolition she had just wreaked upon me. But then came the second wave, the one that truly hollowed me out, grief. 23 years. We met in college. I'd loved her since I was 25. I thought of our daughters, of the family we'd built. Was it all a lie? Had I been a fool all along? My mind reeled back, re-examining every late night, every suspicious text, every lame excuse. The signs had all been there, glowing like neon warnings I had been too blind or too cowardly to read. The charity event that coincided with my fishing trip. The girl's weekend in Napa where her phone was mysteriously off for hours. I had been living with a ghost, a phantom wife, while the real Sarah was off living a different life entirely. And then the most insidious wave of all, self-doubt. It crept in like a poison. Was it my fault, the long hours? The missed dinners, the way I'd get lost in my work, forgetting to ask about her day. Had I starved her of affection? Had I become a boring, predictable husband, a piece of comfortable furniture she no longer noticed? I thought back to our early days, the fire and passion. The way she used to look at me like I was the only man in the world. When did that die? I couldn't pinpoint the moment, and that was the most painful part. It had been a slow, quiet erosion, and I hadn't even noticed the foundation crumbling beneath my feet. I sat in that booth for 3 hours. The waitress refilled my cup twice without a word, her expression a mix of pity and professional indifference. I wasn't a husband anymore. I was a cliché, the last one to know. When I finally drove home, the sun was setting. I composed myself, smoothed my hair, and wiped the anguish from my face, replacing it with a carefully constructed mask of weary normalcy. I walked in and saw the lilies, already looking a little sad, in a vase on the table. Sarah came out of the kitchen wearing one of my old t-shirts and a pair of yoga pants. She looked flushed, vibrant, happy. "Mark, you're home," she exclaimed, her surprise seeming almost genuine. I thought you weren't back until tomorrow. Finished early, I said, my voice unnervingly steady. Landed the big one. She rushed over and gave me a hug. Her skin was warm and she smelled faintly of a man's soap mixed with her own perfume. I didn't flinch. I hugged her back, my arms feeling like foreign appendages. I was holding a stranger. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful," she said, pulling back to look at me. "And the flowers, you old romantic." She kissed my cheek. It felt like a brand. "How was your day?" I asked, the words tasting like ash. "Oh, you know," she said, waving a dismissive hand as she walked back to the kitchen. "Quiet, ran some errands, did some reading, just a boring Tuesday." The ease with which she lied was breathtaking. It was a performance, and I was now the sole member of the audience who knew it was all an act. I was a ghost in my own house, watching a play about a happy marriage I was no longer a part of. And in that moment the grief and self-doubt receded, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. I wasn't going to be a ghost for long. I was going to be the director of the final act, Part 4, The Art of the Lie. The days that followed were a masterclass in psychological warfare, though only one of us knew the war had begun. I played the role of the loving, slightly oblivious husband to perfection. I brought her coffee in bed. I complimented her new dress. I asked about her book club and listened with feigned interest as she spun elaborate tales about fictional characters and the banal dramas of her friends. Living with the knowledge was like holding my breath underwater. Every touch was a betrayal, every shared meal a charade. The house itself felt different, tainted. I'd walk past our bedroom and the air would feel thick, heavy with the memory of what I'd heard. I started sleeping in the guest room, claiming I had to take early work calls and didn't want to disturb her. She accepted it without protest, a little too easily. Her defiance was subtle but infuriating. She engaged in a campaign of low-grade gaslighting, designed to make me feel like the one who was off-kilter. When I casually mentioned she'd been on her phone a lot, she'd sigh dramatically. "Mark, I'm trying to coordinate a fundraiser. It's stressful. Can't you be supportive for once?" One evening I overheard her on the phone in the pantry, her voice a low, conspiratorial whisper. I pressed my ear to the door. "He's just so preoccupied," she was saying. "It's like living with a roommate. I feel so alone, you know. He doesn't even see me anymore." There was a pause. "No, of course not. Derek, you're the only one who understands. You make me feel alive." The entitlement was staggering. She wasn't just cheating, she was rewriting our history to justify it, casting me as the villain of her story, the neglectful husband who drove her into another man's arms. She was building her defense brick by brick in case her secret ever came out. My anger, which I had kept on a tight leash, began to morph into something else, a cold, methodical resolve. She thought I didn't see her. Oh, I was seeing her now, clearer than ever before. The final straw came a week later. Our joint credit card statement arrived. Tucked between charges for groceries and gas was one for $150 from a place called El Amer Lingerie. I knew for a fact she hadn't bought anything like that for me in years. Later that day, while she was in the shower, I went into her closet. Hidden in the back of her underwear drawer, tucked inside a shoebox, was a wispy black lace creation that was clearly not her usual style. It was a costume for her other life. As I stood there holding the flimsy piece of fabric, I felt a strange sense of detachment. The man who would have been heartbroken by this discovery was gone, replaced by someone else, a strategist. An architect plotting a demolition. Sarah wasn't just a cheating wife, she was my antagonist, and every good story needs one. Part 5, The Architect of Ruin. My professional life is built on precision, on understanding systems, stress points, and the chain reactions of cause and effect. I decided to apply the same principles to the deconstruction of my marriage. This wouldn't be a messy, emotional implosion. It would be a controlled demolition. My first move was to gather incontrovertible evidence. Raw emotion wouldn't hold up, data would. I installed recovery software on our shared home computer, a device Sarah used frequently. Within hours, I had resurrected a trove of deleted messages between her and Derek. Reading them was like drinking acid, but I forced myself to be clinical. They were filled with clichés, breathless declarations, and logistical planning for their trysts. I learned Derek was Derek Stallworth, a real estate developer she'd met at a charity auction 6 months ago. He was married, too. The irony was so thick I could taste it. I saved every message, every photo they'd exchanged to a secure, encrypted hard drive. Next, the finances. I spent a weekend poring over 3 years of bank and credit card statements. The patterns were obvious once I knew what to look for. The hotel charges in nearby towns, always explained as conference costs for my new consulting gig. The expensive restaurant bills on days I was out of town. The regular cash withdrawals. She wasn't just cheating on me, she was using our money to fund it. This is when I brought in my unexpected ally, my younger sister, Chloe. Chloe is a bulldog of a divorce attorney in a 5'2" frame. She's sharp, cynical, and fiercely loyal. I met her at a noisy bar far from our town, laid out the whole sordid story, and handed her a folder with my initial findings. She listened without interruption, her expression hardening with every detail. When I finished, she took a long sip of her martini. "Mark," she said, her voice devoid of pity, which I appreciated, "you've been a fool. But a well-organized one. This is good, this is very good." Chloe became my general. She guided me on what else to collect, how to secure my own finances, and most importantly, how to maintain my cover. "You do not confront her." "Not yet," she commanded. "She thinks she's in control. Let her keep thinking that. We spring the trap when it will do the most damage to her and the least to you." The dark humor of the situation wasn't lost on me. Here I was, the mild-mannered architect, running a covert intelligence operation out of my own home office. I started documenting everything in a private journal, noting her lies and my discoveries. There was a grim satisfaction in it, a sense of power in knowing the whole truth while she danced in her web of deception. I even got a look at Derek. I accidentally attended a local business luncheon I knew he'd be at. He was exactly what I expected, tall, tanned, with a predator's smile and a watch that cost more than my first car. He oozed a smug self-assurance that made my skin crawl. Watching him glad-handing people around the room, I felt no jealousy, only a profound, calculating contempt. He was just a cheap plot device in Sarah's sad little melodrama, and I was about to write them both out of the script. Part 6, the anniversary dinner. Our 23rd wedding anniversary was approaching. In previous years, it was a day for celebration, for reaffirming the vows we'd made. This year, it would be a day of reckoning. It was the perfect stage, a monument to the lie our marriage had become. With Chloe's guidance, I crafted my plan. I told Sarah I wanted to do something special to try and reconnect. I booked a private room at an upscale, notoriously discreet restaurant in the city, a place where scenes were not made. She was thrilled, seeing it as a sign that her clueless husband was finally making an effort. "It'll be just the two of us," I promised, "a night to remember." 2 days before the dinner, I put the next phase of the plan into motion. I sent an anonymous email to Derek Stallworth's wife, a woman named Elena. It was simple, containing only a single damning photo of Derek and Sarah kissing in a hotel lobby. Evidence I'd paid a private investigator a small fortune to acquire, along with the date, time, and location of our anniversary dinner reserve at. Ian, the subject line was just 2 words, "Your husband." On the evening of our anniversary, I watched Sarah get ready. She wore a stunning new dress, one I knew our joint account had paid for. She was radiant, glowing with the confidence of a woman who believed she had it all. As I adjusted my tie in the mirror, I saw not a victim, but a man in complete control of his destiny for the first time in a long time. We arrived at the restaurant and were shown to our private room. It was elegant, with a single table set for 2, soft lighting, and a view of the city skyline. We ordered champagne. "To us," Sarah said, raising her glass with a brilliant, false smile. 23 years, can you believe it?" "I can't," I replied, my voice even. "I truly can't believe where we are today." We made small talk through the appetizers. I let her talk about the girls, her friends, her charity work. I was a patient predator, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. It came just as the main course was served. "I have a gift for you," I said, sliding a thick manila envelope across the table. Her eyes lit up. "Mark, you shouldn't have." "Oh, I think I should have," I said softly. "Open it." Her smile faltered as she felt the weight of the paper inside. She pulled out the contents. The first few pages were printouts of her text messages with Derek. Her face went pale. She shuffled through them, her hands beginning to tremble. She saw the hotel receipts, the credit card statements with the lingerie purchase circled in red, the pie's photos. her entire secret life, cataloged and collated in black and white. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with panic and disbelief. Mark, I can explain. Can you? I asked, taking a calm sip of my wine. Can you explain the last 6 months? Can you explain Derek? Can you explain why you've been using our money to build a life with another man while telling me I'm the one who's distant? Before she could formulate a response, there was a sharp knock on the door to our private room. The waiter opened it, and a woman I recognized from the Pies photos strode in, Eleanor Stallworth. She was tall, impeccably dressed, and her face was a mask of cold fury. Sarah, I presume, Eleanor said, her voice dripping with ice. She didn't even glance at me. Her eyes were locked on my wife. I believe you have something that belongs to me, my husband. Sarah looked as if she'd been struck by lightning. She was speechless, cornered. And at that exact moment, Derek Stallworth himself appeared in the doorway behind his wife, his face a comical picture of horror. He'd clearly been summoned by a frantic text from Sarah and had walked right into the trap. Eleanor, honey, what are you doing here? He stammered. Eleanor turned to him, her expression withering. I'm meeting the woman you've been spending my money on, Derek. The woman you told me was your grief counselor. She threw a set of car keys on the table. You can find your own way home, talk to my lawyer. She turned and walked out without a backward glance. The room was silent save for Sarah's ragged breathing. Derek looked from her to me, a dawning, panicked realization on his face. He opened his mouth to say something, but I just held up a hand. I think you should leave, I said, my voice calm and final. He scurried out like the rat he was. Now it was just the two of us, just like I'd promised, a night to remember. Sarah stared at the evidence spread across the table, then at me. The defiance was gone, replaced by the raw, ugly face of utter defeat. How could you? She whispered, tears finally streaming down her face. I leaned forward. No, Sarah, I said, the last 23 years of my life crystallizing into this one, final moment of clarity. How could you? Part 7, Collateral Damage. The aftermath of the dinner was as messy and chaotic as the confrontation had been precise. Sarah's immediate reaction was not remorse, but panicked damage control. She tried to cry, to apologize, to spin a narrative of loneliness and neglect. But the words were hollow, stripped of their power by the cold, hard evidence on the table. I didn't yell. I didn't raise my voice. I simply laid out the terms which Chloe had prepared me for. You will leave the house tonight, I said. You can stay with a friend. My lawyer will be in touch with yours tomorrow. The ride home was silent. Not the strained, uncomfortable silence of recent months, but a vast, empty silence, the sound of an ending. She packed a single bag, her movements jerky and clumsy. As she stood at the door, she made one last attempt. Mark, please, she said, her voice breaking. Don't throw away 23 years. You threw them away, Sarah, I replied, not unkindly, but with absolute finality. You threw them away one lie at a time. I'm just cleaning up the mess. The hardest part by far was telling our daughters. They were home for a weekend from college. I sat them down in the living room, the same room where we'd celebrated countless birthdays and Christmases, and told them the truth. I didn't editorialize or demonize their mother. I just stated the facts as gently as I could. Seeing the confusion and pain in their eyes was 100 times worse than Sarah's betrayal. That was the true collateral damage, the shrapnel that hit the innocent bystanders. The divorce was, as Chloe had predicted, swift and brutally efficient. With the mountain of evidence I had, Sarah's legal position was non-existent. She didn't fight for the house or for a ruinous settlement. She just wanted it to be over. I learned through the legal back and forth that her affair with Derek had imploded the same night. His wife, true to her word, had filed for divorce and was taking him for everything he was worth. There was no romantic future for them, just the shared wreckage of their choices. Part 8, Picking Up the Blueprints. The first few months of living alone in that big, quiet house were brutal. Every room held a memory, every corner a ghost. I was surrounded by the evidence of a life that no longer existed. There were nights I'd wander the halls, feeling like a stranger in my own home, the silence a physical weight pressing down on me. I was free, but I was also profoundly alone. I realized I couldn't heal in the place I was broken. The house I had designed and built, my fortress, had become my prison. So I made a decision. I put it on the market. Selling the house was the most liberating thing I could have done. It was a tangible act of letting go, of closing a chapter. I sold most of the furniture with it, her furniture, our furniture, and packed only what was truly mine: my books, my drafting table, my old records, and the photos of my daughters. The legal process ground on, an impersonal machine turning a life into a set of documents, but I was already moving forward. I focused on my work with a renewed passion. The big city contract I'd landed turned into a landmark project, a soaring testament of glass and steel that demanded all my focus and creativity. It felt symbolic, as if I were taking the rubble of my personal life and building something new and strong from it. My daughters and I found a new rhythm. Our relationships became more honest, more adult. We talked on the phone for hours, not about the divorce, but about their lives, their dreams, their futures. They saw me not just as their father, but as a person, a man who had been hurt and was trying to heal. In a painful, roundabout way, the crisis had brought us closer. Part 9, Building a New Foundation. A year has passed since that Tuesday afternoon. I live in a modern loft apartment downtown, with huge windows that look out over the city I'm helping to reshape. The space is mine, filled with clean lines, functional design, and the things that bring me joy. There is no trace of Sarah, no ghosts of a past life. I hear things occasionally. Sarah is living in a small condo across town. She's dating, trying to piece her life back together. I hold no ill will towards her anymore. The anger has faded, leaving behind only a kind of sad, distant pity. She made her choices, and I made mine. My life is smaller now, but it's more authentic. I've reconnected with old friends. I've started hiking again on the weekends, finding a peace in the quiet solitude of the mountains that I never found in my sprawling suburban home. My work is thriving. I'm designing buildings with heart and purpose. A few months ago, I met someone. Her name is Anne. She's a landscape architect, and we were introduced through a mutual colleague. It's slow, it's cautious, but it's real. We talk for hours about art and design and our shared love for old jazz records. She knows my story, and she isn't scared by the cracks in my foundation. She understands that sometimes things have to be torn down before you can build something better. Last night, we were sitting on my balcony, sharing a bottle of wine and looking out at the glittering cityscape. The building I designed stood tall against the skyline, its lights shining like a beacon. For the first time in a long time, I felt a profound sense of peace. I had survived the demolition. The betrayal didn't define me. It was just a stress test that revealed the weaknesses in a flawed design. I had picked up the blueprints of my own life and had begun to build again on a new, stronger foundation. And this time, it was a structure built to last. If this story hit home, like and subscribe for more gripping tales of love and betrayal. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you forgive or seek revenge? What should Mark's next chapter look like? Your engagement helps create more stories like this one. Check out the next video popping up now for another twist-filled saga.